Well, the first thing I got to ask, I mean, the concept, because it can be a real intimate thing, but this thing's like a world builder too, because there's scope once we get towards the end. I don't want to give too much away, but that really gives it impact, gives it stakes, and yet it's very intimate. Could you talk about that, Damien, as the filmmaker, looking at the world, and then Ryan, I'll talk to you about sort of living in it, with the physicality and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, as far as building this world, it was very much inspired by the reality that we live in today, and the role that social media is playing in everyone's lives, and that's kind of how the Max character was developed, and it was taking sort of like the worst of our culture and people who are doing terrible things for attention, and building it into the horror genre, the exorcism genre, which I'm a huge fan of. And I come from, my background is in I've worked in a lot of unscripted television, a lot of reality TV, which is anything but reality. And I've always been fascinated by the way that editing can influence people, and how lower quality, like grainy, shaky cell phone footage, all makes people think that it's more realistic, it's more verite, it's more believable. So just combining that with like the world of horror and the supernatural element, that's how the Cleansing Hour was born. And it has this very meta aesthetic and like element to it that people can feel like they can relate to it.
Ryan, it's because Max is like the unreliable narrator, because you're seeing life as he wants it, but not life as it is. Could you talk about playing? Yeah, because it's a weird meta thing about identity in the current situation. Could you sort of talk about that and approaching it from your point of view?
Well, it was actually surreal because for me, when Damien had asked me for a couple photos off my own Instagram, and I was diving into that character at that specific time, I started to realize some certain parallels in my own life that I wasn't too happy about. So I was like, wait a second, I'm a little too close to this character. I don't want to be living this character in real life, which was able to be implemented during filming. So while we're watching Max carry out his egotistical needs and the self-reliance on other people's views of him, and turning it into currency, Kyle Gallner plays an amazing job, an amazing character in this movie too. But he was more focused on the money, while Max is focused on the ego. And I really wanted to give that to this character. And what Damien did so well with this character is he stripped him of the ego, and without giving too much away, we see how resilient the ego can be, even in the worst of odds. So more so in parallel with today's age, we see, that even though people know they're not doing the right thing, they're continuing to do the wrong thing because it services their ego.
Because physicality comes into that, but obviously you come from that background with the dance and all that kind of stuff, but putting on like almost the Christ beard and all that kind of stuff. And even in the beginning with that shroud, that was just awesome. But can you talk about how using that physicality, because it's almost like he's part devil and part angel, and that's the whole meta thing of it. Can you sort of talk about that?
I think in an essence that Max does relate to more of the demon than not. In fact, if Max were to be given the opportunity to sell his soul for 100 million views, he might question it. But yeah, I like the fact that the physicality and the practicality of what Damien brought to us as actors allowed us to really live in the moment, specifically in certain moments where the actual set is now on top of Max, and we're starting to see how Max interacts with these obstacles, and what he's willing to put up through for the sanctity of his friendship, and his views. But yeah, the physicality was a big part of this movie. Damien could probably expand on a little bit more, but for me as the actor, I believed it offered layers that if we had not had, I don't know if the audience would have so much fun with it. It gave a new opportunity to make that arc a little bit higher before we reach the peak.
I'm gonna just going off of what Ryan said. The physicality of the Max role at first blush, you might not expect, this priest who's standing on set to be a very physical role. He's sort of confined to his little area, but I think that part of stripping the character of this ego that he is holding on to so dearly is torturing him a bit. It really is a metaphor for what it takes to like smash your pride. You have to like literally be cut open. You have to literally be hung from a rope, or cables, whatever it may be. But I gotta give Ryan props because like he really brought a character alive in a physical way. He had already had that ability physically, but he was able to bring it to the character in a way that was so believable. I remember when we were shooting, Ryan, I was blown away. Like, it was like, boom, you just turn it on and it was there. And it was, you had a way of bringing it to life that was bigger than I ever.
It's interesting. It's like, because it's such a compressed space, it's almost this pinball in that room. It's like, where it goes over here, and that's through editing, but using that space. And you were talking about reality television. It's about perspective and perception, whether it's from Alexis as Lane or the demon, or it's from Ryan or it's from Kyle. It's all about moving that around in strategy. Could you talk about that in terms of that construct? Because that really makes it work because of that pressure cooker.
Yeah, well, I like the claustrophobia of being in one space, but shooting that is a challenge because you want it to remain interesting. You want to see the room, you want to see it from different angles, and it needs to look interesting no matter where the camera is. So I give a lot of props to the production designer for designing a set that looks really cool and believable and lived in, and then what we really had to pay a lot of attention to was like making sure that we're always doing something different. Every part of the movie, we're trying to see the set in a different way. And there were a lot of challenges with that, quite frankly, because, when it came to even shooting like wide establishing, we weren't able to do that a lot of times until we had all three actors on set, and Alex was in makeup for 2 to 3 hours every day. So oftentimes we were, limited.